Hello and welcome to another off-the-shelf board game review. Today we're going to be looking at a card game called Sentinels of the Multiverse. Sentinels of the Multiverse is a cooperative game for 2 to 5 players, ages 8 and up. Like all good cooperative games, Sentinels of the Multiverse can actually be played by one player. The only thing is, if you're playing with one player, that one player is going to be required to control 3 superheroes minimum. In Sentinels of the Multiverse, each player is going to take control of a superhero in a made-up universe. There's no IPs that you're familiar with using this game, no DC or Marvel or anything like this. This is a completely made-up comic book universe made up by the creators of the game. Players are going to control a superhero. They're going to be trying to take down a villain in one of a couple different various environments. This is a copy of the enhanced edition of Sentinels of the Multiverse. It was a reissuing of the original game, which made the game more friendly at various different player accounts and also added some cardboard tokens into the game for help with the bookkeeping of the game. I don't believe the original version of the game is available anymore, but if you do see a different version of the game that looks older, make sure you do try to get the enhanced edition, because the improvements between the enhanced edition and the original edition are definitely worth it. But again, I really don't believe the original edition is still available on the marketplace. Sentinels of the Multiverse, the card game, is going to come with one instruction book, enough cards for 10 different heroes, 4 different environments, and 4 different villains, and a whole bunch of cardboard tokens to help with the upkeep of the game. There are currently 2 expansions available for the game on the market, and there's a third one on the way if it isn't out already, but I believe it hasn't come out yet. The first expansion is Rook City, second expansion is Infernal Relics, and I believe there's an expansion called Shattered Timelines, which is either getting close to being out or is going to be out within the next couple of months. Sentinels of the Multiverse retails for $40. For the $40, you're actually getting quite a bit for your money. The game comes with almost 600 cards, a very well-designed box that actually keeps all your cards, and there's plenty of room for all the expansions. I don't have all the expansions in here, but if you do have all the expansions and they're not sleeved, both of the 2 follow-up expansions will fit in this box with enough room left over to make everything fit very nicely. The basic game comes with 10 heroes, 4 villains, and 4 different environment cards. The heroes all play differently, which adds a lot of replay value to the game. And the game also comes with dividers for all the extra heroes and the extra villains that are available in the extra expansions. So when you do buy them, you don't have to get any extra dividers. They're already pre-provided for you with the base game when you purchase it. And take a moment to go over the component quality that comes with the game for what you're getting. The rulebook for the game is actually pretty well designed. It actually is designed to look a lot like a traditional comic book. On the back side of it, there is a summary of how the game plays, or broken down turn order the game plays: villain turn, hero turn, environment turn. And also there's a little bit of backstory included with the back of the game, explaining the heroes, explaining the villains, and a little bit of fluff to the game. There is also a nice section describing the complexity of the different heroes and the villains. 1 is easiest, 3 is the hardest to use, all the way up to a 4 when you're talking about the villains. Basically, for new players, you'd probably stick with the level 1s and the level 2s, and especially for the villains, they recommend your first villain that you fight is Baron Blade, and as you get better with the game and you want a greater challenge, you start going to the more powerful villains in the game. The rulebook itself is written in a typical comic style. The rules are decently done, breaks down how all the cards are used in the game, and gives a pretty good overview of how to play the game. This is an exception-based game, so it's impossible for any rulebook to ever cover every card interaction that ever be in one of these kind of games. It's just absolutely impossible. So there's actually parts of the rulebook where it actually specifically says that if you can't come to a resolution, just try to figure it out to the best of your abilities. Of course, they word it much nicer there, and they explain it nicer in there, but that's just kind of one of the things you have to deal with an exception-based game. The card quality is actually pretty decent. The cards are nice and thick, not too bendy. They shuffle up very nicely. The artwork is what I best describe as early generation comics with really solid black lines on them. Pretty good artwork, a little bit cartoony, but still pretty decent artwork. It's the art style, and I actually like the art style on it. There was one problem I had with my cards, and I've heard that this isn't a situation that's unique to my cards. I've heard of other people having this problem. I'm going to see if I can get the camera to focus in on this, but if you look, you'll notice that my cards are unevenly cut. About half of them are one length and the other half are a different length. If I turn it sideways, it's probably easier to see. Get the camera to focus here for you. There you go. You see that the cards are unevenly cut. And it's not just one deck, it's multiple decks. Actually, in my case, it's all my heroes are unevenly cut. I didn't have any problems with my villains, didn't have any problems with my environment cards, but all my hero cards are unevenly cut, which is all 10 heroes. I tried contacting the company that produces the game about 6 weeks ago. I got an email back from them, but I never got a replacement product from them, so eventually on my end I'm going to need to follow up and find out what's going on with that. I have been told in the past that they are really easy to work with, and that's greater than games. They're supposed to be really good with their customer service, so probably my fault. I just need to follow up and find out what's going on there. Game also comes with a whole bunch of cardboard tokens. There's cardboard tokens for life, and there's cardboard tokens for status effects to help with the bookkeeping of the game. Text on them is very large. These are actually pretty thick cardboard, almost game board thickness. Easy text on one side. There's a whole bunch of different of these counters to help you keep track of the game. Overall, the components for the game are actually very nice, except for the cutting issue on the cards, the mismatched size. The cards are actually very nice. They're thick, durable. They're going to last a long time. You're going to be pretty impressed with the quality of the components, especially since you're only paying $40, or if you go online, you can probably find even cheaper than that. Overall, a very good package for what you're paying for. Before I explain to you how to play Sentinels of the Multiverse, I want to take a few moments to describe how the various cards are used in the game. There's actually 3 different decks of cards in this game. There's the hero deck, which is each player is going to control at least one superhero. And the reason why I say at least one superhero is because the game does require at least 3 superheroes to be in play at the start of the game. So if you're playing 1 or 2 players, then each player is going to be required to control at least 1 superhero, possibly 2. In a 2-player game, you could actually play each player controlling 2 superheroes, or 1 player can control 2 and the other could play 1. Or in a single-player game, if you want to play it alone, you can play controlling 3 superheroes. The next deck is the villain deck, and the final deck is the environment deck. Each superhero deck is going to come with 1 superhero. The superhero has the name of the superhero, in this case is Legacy. The next thing on the card is going to be how many hit points he has. When he runs out of hit points, he's going to be defeated. As soon as a superhero is defeated, they're not removed from the game. The card is simply flipped over, and you're going to see they have some reduced abilities. There's no player elimination in this game, but you do have some extremely reduced power in the game. You're still in the game, but you're not doing as much as you would have been doing if you were still alive. There's going to be some text giving a description of what kind of power this superhero has every time he's in play, which is basically a permanent ability. Every one of the heroes has a different permanent ability that they always have in play. And finally, in the lower corner, you're going to notice what's called a Nemesis Icon. The Nemesis Icon basically means that if this superhero is in a battle with a villain who also has the matching Nemesis Icon, they're going to do extra damage to each other. Now the damage is only to each other. So Legacy's Nemesis is Baron Blade. So anytime Legacy attacks Baron Blade is going to take extra damage. And anytime Baron Blade attacks Legacy is going to take extra damage. Well, it doesn't apply to the other heroes who are playing that game. So in a game with Legacy, Wraith, and Ra, Wraith and Ra won't get that bonus. Only Legacy and Baron Blade will against each other. Every superhero deck comes with 4 different kinds of cards. There's equipment limited cards, which basically means there's going to be only 1 copy of this card in play at a time. You have more copies in your hand or in your deck in case this gets discarded somehow, but you can never have more than 1 copy in play. Next thing you're going to have are your ongoing abilities, which is like the prior card, which was an equipment limited. It stays in play permanently, but you can actually have more than 1 copy of this in play. Then you have your ongoing limited, which means you only have 1 copy of this card, but it stays in play until something causes it to be discarded. And your final cards are your one-shots, which are basically played and discarded immediately. Each card is going to basically have some text at the top saying what kind of card it is, and the text in this little box right here is going to tell you exactly what kind of effect it has on the game. For example, this one says Legacy does 1 target 4 melee damage. So as soon as this card is played, you choose a target who's going to take 4 damage. This one is equipment limit. It stays in place as you may use an additional power during your power phase. Basically, if you have this equipped in play, you now have the ability to use 2 powers per turn. Next we have the villain deck. Now each villain deck is going to come with a villain card and a setup card. Each one of the villains has a slightly different setup card, so make sure you read the full setup card before you begin playing, and also read the gameplay section, because all the villains do play differently. If you want to increase the difficulty of the game, there's a section on the bottom called Advanced, which allows you to make this villain much more powerful. Now this advanced section is not balanced. It is supposed to make the game much more challenging when you've played the game quite a bit and you're starting to find that some of the villains you're starting to predict what they're going to do and they're getting a little bit easier to defeat. Adding the advanced rules and become much more challenging. Now these cards are two-sided, and the reason why they do that is because the villains are also two-sided, and they have different abilities on each side. You have this side, which has 40 hit points, and in the case of Baron Blade, when he's defeated, his card is flipped over and he must be defeated again, but now he only has 30 hit points. You'll also notice that he has a different victory condition depending on which side of the card he's on. If he's on this side of the card, his victory condition is if he gets 15 cards in his discard pile, he wins. Whereas once it flips over, you see that all you have to do is just defeat his hit points. Like the heroes, you're going to have cards that stay in play permanently. You're going to have minions which also stay in play until they're defeated. And you're going to have one-shots which are basically fired off once and then discarded. Now you're going to notice on some of these cards, especially the minions, you're going to have a number in the right-hand corner. That's how many hit points this card has. This card is going to stay into play until the heroes manage to do 5 points of damage, and then it will be discarded. Finally, you have your environment cards. There's your kind of environment cards that, like the minions, have hit points. This will stay in play until it takes 10 points of damage. Then you have your standard environment cards, which have their own special effects. They're either discarded at the end of the turn, or they stay in play until the heroes do something such as discard one card or some other effect. I already showed you these earlier, but there's also hit point tokens that come in various denominations, anywhere from 1 to 25. Basically, when you take damage, you just slowly remove the hit point tokens until they're reduced to 0. And finally, you have the upkeep tokens, which help you keep track of the various upkeep that comes with the game. There's a lot of abilities the heroes have, and they start piling up, and you want to be able to either use scratch paper or use these. These are actually pretty easy to use, and they're much more simpler than using scratch paper all the time. If you have an ability that makes your superhero legacy permanently gain 1 extra damage, you just simply use that here as a simple reminder that he's now doing 1 extra damage. Or if you have a negative effect on you that says you cannot play cards anymore, simply place it on your character until that effect is gone. Sentinels of the Multiverse is pretty quick and easy to set up. I figured you probably don't want to watch me count a whole bunch of counters, so I went and set up the game. To start the game, each players are going to agree on what villain they're going to encounter. Then they're going to look at the setup card for the villain that they've chosen, and they're going to follow the setup instructions for that specific villain. In the example of Baron Blade, you're going to go through his deck and you're going to find one of his cards that called the Mobile Defense Platform, which is actually going to start in play. You're then going to choose an environment where you're going to encounter the villain in, and then each player is going to pick one hero, draw 4 cards, and then you're ready to begin playing. Each round of Sentinels of the Multiverse is going to go in 3 phases. You're going to have the villain phase, the hero phase, and the environment phase. You're going to start with the villain phase at the beginning of every turn. At the start of the villain turn, you're going to look to see if there are any villain cards that are currently in play that have an effect at the beginning of the villain's turn. If there are no cards in play that have effect at the beginning of the villain's turn, you're going to draw the top card from the villain deck. Look at what kind of card it is. In this case, it's going to be a cannon that's going to be added to the Mobile Defense Platform, which has 7 hit points, so I add 7 hit point tokens to it. You're then going to read any card and see if they have any effects at this point of the villain's phase. You're going to take care of them. And then you're going to look for any cards that are at the end of the villain phase that have an effect at the end of the villain phase. You're going to take care of whatever effects they may have. Once the villain's turn is done, you're going to have the hero turns. Heroes are going to go in order. Starting with the first hero, they're going to look to see if they have any cards in play that have effect at the start of the turn. Then they're going to look at their cards in their hand, pick one card in their hand, play that one card, and then they're going to use one of their powers that are currently in play. In this case, I don't have any cards in play, so he's going to use his basic hero power for this example. And then you're going to draw a card, check for any end of turn events that happen at the end of that hero's phase, and then you go on to the next heroes, doing that over and over until all the heroes have gone. Alternately, if you do not play a card and you do not use a power, you have the option of drawing an extra card at the end of your turn. Once all the heroes have gone, it's now time for the environment card to go. For the environment turn, you're going to look to see if there's any environment cards in play. If there are, you're going to see if they have any effects at the beginning of the environment turn. If there are none, or if there are, you're going to take care of that effect, then you're going to flip over the top card of the environment deck, see if it has any abilities or effects. In this case, we put 10 hit point tokens on this one. Then we're going to have the end of the environment phase, which means we're going to look at all the environment cards in play and see if any of the environment cards have an end of turn effect for the environment phase. That's how a complete round of Sentinels of the Multiverse goes. Then you just start all over again with the villain phase and keep going through until either the villain's win condition or loss condition has met. Now that I've shown you how to play Sentinels of the Multiverse, I'm going to take a moment to show you what a sample game round will look like. Right now I have a game set up between three heroes: Haka, Absolute Zero, the Wraith. They're battling Bear and Blade in Megapolis City. There's a couple of cards already in play that have some ongoing effects. We're going to put some counters out there to remind us of their ongoing effects. The most important one right now is going to be the environment card right here, which is going to turn all damage right now into melee damage, which is going to really hamper Absolute Zero the way his powers work. So we need to get rid of that card as quickly as possible so Absolute Zero can do his best damage. The environment card is also going to add 1 extra damage to all damage dealt, even by environment, hero, and villains. The final thing we're going to add is a +1 damage reminder to this powered remote turret, which states that anytime there's a mobile defense platform in play, this card gets 1 extra damage, and that will also combine with this damage over here. We're going to start the turn with the villain phase. At the beginning of the villain phase, we're going to see if there's any cards in play that have ongoing effects, and there are not. So we're going to simply flip over the top card of the villain deck, and we're going to get a minion card. Minion card comes into play with 5 hit points. So let's put a couple hit point tokens on it up really quickly. Now that we're done with the draw part of phase, we're going to come to the end of round for the villain, where we look to see if there's any cards in play right now that have any ongoing effects. There are actually 2 of them, and we can handle them in either order. Just for simplicity, we're going to start with the minions. The minion card states that the hero with the most hit points in play right now is going to get attacked by those minions, and they're going to do as much damage as their current hit point total. The minion currently has 5 hit points, and we see that the Wraith currently has 22 hit points. Absolute Zero currently has 28, and Haka currently has 29. So Haka is going to be the first target of the minions. The minions are going to do 5 points of damage, which is melee damage, +1 damage, so Haka is now going to take 6 points of damage. The next thing we're going to do is the the powered remote turret. Powered remote turret normally would do 2 points of damage to all heroes in play, but since there's a mobile defense platform, it's going to get the +1 and the extra +1 for the environment card in play, and it's going to be melee damage, so every hero is going to take 4 points of melee damage. Wraith is going to lose 4 hit points. Absolute Zero is going to lose 4 hit points. And Haka, we're going to remove a 5 and add a 1 for a total of 4 points of damage done to him also. We're now done with the villain phase, and we're now going to start the hero phase. Starting with Haka's turn. Haka's going to look for any cards in play that have an ongoing effect. There are none, so he's going to simply play a card. He's going to see that the heroes are getting beat up pretty badly right now, so he's going to play Ground Pound. Ground Pound is an ongoing effect that makes it so only heroes can do damage until that card is removed from play. And to play it, he's required to discard 2 cards. Fortunately, we're going to have to discard some cards, which are going to be pretty useful, but we need to get that card in play to help our heroes at this time. Now we come to the part of Haka's turn where he gets to play a power. And since he has no power cards in play right now, he's going to use his basic power, which allows him to target one target and do 2 points of damage. He also has this ability in play called Punish the Weak. Punish the Weak says if he targets the target currently in play with the least amount of hit points, which in this case would be the minions, he's going to do an extra point of damage, and he's going to get one more point of damage for the environment, for a total of 4 points of damage. He's going to use his power, attack the minions, and they're going to take 4 points of damage. Haka then draws a card, adds it to his hand, checks for any end of turn effects, and his turn is now over. Now we're going to come to Absolute Zero. Absolute Zero does have a card in play that takes effect at the beginning of his round. And we're going to see how this melee ability is actually hampering Absolute Zero right now. Normally, Absolute Zero gets an extra +1 cold damage to any abilities that do cold, so this would normally do 2 points of damage to all non-hero targets in play, but right now all damage is melee, so this is only do 1 point of melee damage to any viable targets, plus the extra one right here from the environment card. So he's going to do 2 points of damage to the environment, 2 points of damage to the platform, to the turret, 2 points of damage to the platform, and 2 points of damage to the minion, which is actually going to take them out of play. Absolute Zero is then going to play a card, and this isn't probably the most optimal move, but I'm going to show it to you just so you can see how it affects. He's going to play a one-shot, which allows him to do 3 points of cold damage to any target, but to do so he has to take 3 points of fire damage himself. Normally what that would allow him to do is, with all these cards in play, he would do that damage, use the bonuses, and actually end up healing himself for, I think he'd actually heal himself for 5 points damage, doing the quick math here really quick, which would have been a fantastic card. But unfortunately, this environment card is in play, which makes his cold damage melee damage, and his fire damage is now melee damage, really hampering Absolute Zero. So he's going to do 3 points of damage to one of the targets. He's going to choose the mobile defense platform, which has the most potential hurt our heroes right now. It's going to take 3 points of damage, and then Absolute Zero is going to take 3 points of melee damage. And if we add in the extra +1, we're going to see that's actually be 4 and 4. Absolute Zero then draws a card, looks for any cards in play that have an end of turn effect, and there are none, so now we're going to move on to the Wraith's turn. Wraith doesn't have any cards in play right now that have an ongoing effect, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to play a card. And we're going to play a card called Grappling Hook. And this is going to help our heroes. Grappling Hook says destroy one ongoing or environment card and draw a card. We're going to play this. Get rid of this environment card that is hampering our heroes, especially Absolute Zero right now. And these all exit play now. We also draw a card, and then the Wraith gets to use a power. We're now going to use Wraith's ability to Stun Bolt, and Stun Bolt says is that the Wraith deals one target 1 projectile damage until the start of your next turn. Reduce all damage dealt by that target by 1. So we're going to use this card to play 1 point of damage, and it's going to do -1 damage. And actually, that's not a very good move. I'll take that back. We'll do 1 point of damage to this mobile platform, which has actually been hurting us. We'll get rid of the mobile platform. There'll be 2 cards in the Baron Blade's discard pile. And that's actually a much better move, I think. Wraith's turn is part of Wraith's power phase is now over. She's going to draw a card. Look for any cards in play that have an ongoing effect, and that's going to end her turn. At the start of the environment phase, there is an environment card in play right now that's going to have an ability that's going to occur at the beginning of the turn. The train states that at the beginning of the environment phase, this card will do 2 targets with the highest amount of hit points, 5 melee damage each. We look at our heroes, we see that the Wraith currently has 18 hit points, Absolute Zero has 20, and Haka currently has 20 hit points also. So this card is going to do 5 points of damage to Absolute Zero and 5 points of damage to Haka. Fortunately, the Wraith has a card in play right now that says that reduce damage dealt by all environment cards by 1. So Absolute Zero is going to take 4 points of damage, and Haka is also going to take 4 points of damage. We draw a card, and we're going to get another train. Simply put 10 hit point counters on it. And then we look for any environment cards that take effect at the end of the turn. There are none, and we have now completed a complete round of Sentinels of the Multiverse. At the end of the first round, we see that our heroes are actually in a lot of trouble. Their hit points are down low, and they haven't done much damage to Baron Blade yet, but they have more cards to play. Let's see if they can turn her around. Sentinels of the Multiverse is suggested age 13 plus, but as I said in the beginning of the review, this game can easily be played by 8-year-olds or older. The artwork in the game isn't anything that you wouldn't be too afraid to show anybody, nothing too overly graphic. The worst thing you ever find is probably something such as this dinosaur with blood on his teeth, or cards from Race Deck who's just tying up a wound on her arm. But other than that, the images aren't too overly graphic or overly dark. Nothing that an 8-year-old or 9-year-old probably couldn't see on their Saturday morning cartoons or something like that. Some of the images are a little bit darker looking, but again, nothing too terrible. There's also various difficulty levels through the game depending on what villains you choose. Some of the villains are extremely easy to beat, some of the villains are extremely tough to beat. And that also goes for the heroes. Some of the heroes, such as Absolute Zero, are a challenge to play because all their cards combo off each other, and you have to really do a lot of math and do a lot of figuring, a lot of planning to use him, whereas you have heroes like Ra, who's pretty straightforward. His main thing is he does damage and just keeps on doing damage over the course of the game. He's a little bit more simplistic, but he's not too simplistic, and anybody can enjoy playing him. The game does require a little bit of mathematics, simple addition and subtraction. Luckily, the hit point tokens are really easy to look over and easy to use and do simple math. Again, not too difficult of a game. The turnarounds are pretty easy, pretty straightforward. Villain phase, hero phase, then environment phase. The game can get a little bit cumbersome with the upkeep by continually having to have abilities that have continuous upkeep, which can add to the difficulty of the game. Overall, though, with a parent or parents who are willing to sit down with kids, I think a 7 or 8-year-old can easily sit down and enjoy this game and have a lot of fun, making it a really good family game. And the adjustable difficulty with the villains and the adjustable difficulty of the heroes really helps. Now, this is stating about the base game. I don't know about the expansions or how they look for family friendliness or anything like that, but I know some of the artwork from them makes me wonder what they will look like for families. This is one of the dividers that comes with the game, but it is for one of the expansions, so you may want to consider that before you buy any of the expansions, though. But the base game of Sentinels of the Multiverse, I think, is a great family game. It plays up to 5 players, and as a cooperative game, everybody plays together. We're not playing mother versus child, or you're not playing against each other, you're playing against the game, so you win or lose as a family. Sentinels of the Multiverse is designed to be enjoyable by various player counts. It can be enjoyable anywhere from 1 to 5 players. The playtime on it isn't too bad. It lists about an hour to an hour and a half, and that's pretty much an average game. Some of your games may run longer, some of them are going to be shorter. In the beginning, it's going to be a little bit more challenging, especially if you start using the heroes who have lots of abilities that require a lot of upkeep, and you're required to constantly be tracking bonuses and penalties. You may go through a few players' rounds, realize that you forgot to do something because you're still new to the game, and either decide to backtrack, which isn't going to add to the length of the game, or just remember to do it next round. That's going to be up to your player group. But overall, once you learn how to play the game and everybody's pretty much comfortable with the rules, an hour is pretty much a standard play time. Unless you're going to have 5 players, that may make a little bit on the longer side, or if you only have 2 or 3 players, that may make a little bit on the shorter side. But an hour 15 is a good average play time for the game. I'm always amazed that the hobby of board gaming doesn't have a lot more superhero board games. It seems like a superhero board game would be a given to be something that a lot of board gamers would enjoy playing, but in reality there's less than a handful of superhero games are on the market, and out of those, only 2 or 3 are actually really good. As I always find it kind of funny that there's 400 or 500 ways to play an elf or a dwarf, but there's only a handful of ways to play a superhero. It seems like a genre that is sorely underrepresented in the board game hobby. Sentinels of the Multiverse is a great cooperative game. As all good cooperative games, it can be played solo or it can be played up to 5 players. I love the fact that the game comes with 10 heroes in the base set, plus 4 environments, plus 4 villains, making the game have a lot of replay value and a lot of variety. You can play multiple games without having the same makeup of heroes or the same makeup of villains. You have a different game every time. I like the adjustable difficulty of the heroes, the adjustable difficulty of the villains, anywhere from easy with Baron Blade all the way up to the more challenging villains. And also, it's nice that the game already has 2 expansions available for it right now and a 3rd one on the way. I appreciate the artwork. The game actually isn't too difficult to learn, but like a lot of these kind of games, it is an exception-based game, as I said earlier, so there are going to be times where you're going to run into rules discrepancies, and it's basically going to come down to the players to make a decision sometimes. It's just the nature of the beast. Some games like this are just going to have those kind of instances, and most of the time, if you just look at the game and take things in a first in, first out order, you're not going to have this problem too many times, and it's actually very rare where you're going to have this instance, but there are going to be some times where you're just going to have to simply make a decision. Overall, I think Sentinels of the Multiverse is probably one of the best superhero games available on the market. The only way I could see it being even better is if they would have got the license either DC or Marvel, and unfortunately they didn't, but they did manage to create a very entertaining superhero genre with a made-up universe of some heroes that have a lot of variety. A lot of the heroes, you're going to see some similarities to. A lot of the heroes are available on the market already. Wraith, might as well face it, Wraith is pretty much a Batman. You have Bunker, I'm trying to find him. You have Bunker, which is pretty much Iron Man. You have the Visionary, a psychic. I'm sure you forgot which psychic that person is. And the villains are pretty much the same. I mean, some of the villains are unique and they're well done, but if you look at some of the villains, you might have an idea of who they're based on. Grand Warlord Voss, an alien from another planet. He's a warlord leading an army attacking the galaxies. Again, not quite a direct copy, but it's kind of nice homage. Overall, Sentinels of the Multiverse is a fantastic cooperative game. It has a fantastic theme, which is not seen too much on the market right now. It plays from 1 to 5 players, has a lot of replayability, a lot of variety, varying difficulties, pretty good component quality except for the card cup, but apparently that's not a widespread problem. I'm one of the few people who has it. There's a great storage solution for the game. It's very easy to store, very easy to break out, put away. And again, the theme is not overly represented in the board game hobby. There are not a lot of superhero games. Right now there's pretty much 3 on the market that are pretty much well known. There's the DC hero games, there's the Marvel Legendary, and there's Sentinels of the Multiverse. Of the 3, Sentinels is the oldest, and in my opinion, it's also the best of the 3. Again, if you're looking for a great cooperative game, check out Sentinels of the Multiverse.